So good afternoon. For those who don't know me, my name is Jim Atkinson. I am the Director of Programs and Services at ArtPride, New Jersey. I'm coming to you today from my home office in Haddon Township, which is on the ancestral land of the Lenni Lenape people. I want to thank everyone for taking time to be with us. We're very fortunate to have two of our friends from TRG Arts, Stuart Nicole and Jenny Cohn. We'll be handing it off to Stuart in just a minute. He's going to be walking us through some new and exciting updates to data center, especially around AI that are coming your way. So we're very excited to hear about that. We're also going to have Jenny with us for a bit to just answer any general questions you have about data center, any issues you're running into, kind of talk about what's working. And then once that part's over, we'll be thanking Stuart and Jenny for their time, and we're going to spend the final part of our meeting today speaking amongst ourselves, brainstorming, sharing some data with colleagues about how we're all using the system. So that's what's ahead of you for the next hour. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and hand things off to Stuart, and thank you for joining us. And it's unusual, but you're joining us from the States today. We usually
I
see
am.
you in the UK. So
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. Thanks, Jim. And wonderful to be with you all today. Um, Today and the now is a big moment of change, I think, with AI headed our way. We've got things that are coming along that are thrilling as they are terrifying, as probably we're going to be rewriting history or seeing now being a moment in history uh, in the same way that the birth of the internet was, and potentially even the Industrial Revolution. I mean, the AI impact is growing and is going to be huge. And so I see this AI potential having a real impact, not only in how we do things, but what the opportunities are to even what we do. I think it's really going to change and impact all of us, especially in cultural organization, especially within the administrative departments of cultural organizations. We are going to see changes in what's possible for what we do. And so I'm going to share with you now a seed of an idea. We have already started working with a few organizations with this idea, but I'm going to be asking some of you if you fancy coming on the journey with us as an innovator or as an early adopter. This isn't a fully fledged out product by any stretch, as you'll find out, but let me take you through it. First of all, I should say that I've been working in culture for over 25 years. And my role really for that entire 25 years has been helping organizations understand their business through data. And one of the challenges that I have always faced is that it's very easy for us to present organizations with data that in effect looks through the rear view mirror. What has happened? How did that event perform? Who came to that event? Did I meet my targets? What was the sales trajectory for that event? And then administrators, marketers tend to take that insight and then apply that to shows that are coming up or performance for the next season, etc. And the challenge that I've always had and always felt and have always tried to change is to create tools that help us look through the front windscreen of this metaphorical arts car, which is probably a bad metaphor, but bear with me for a second. So uh, there was there is also we're working in this kind of environment where our patrons' expectations of how we engage with them, how we interact with them, is being elevated by their experiences with other organizations. And to date, those other organizations, the big commercials, et cetera, have had more money, more investment behind being able to use clever tools to predict and look out through this front windscreen of the metaphorical arts car. And so the tools available to us really haven't kept pace, mainly because of cost. And I'll tell you a little story. We wrote back in 2009, we wrote a recommendations system for the Barbican Centre in London. And this was quite revolutionary at the time. We used all of their transactional history in order to, for every patron on their database, figure out what the next best show was for each patron. And it was a really great tool, except that it took 8 hours a day to process. So you imagine that when the Barbican Centre comes to us and says, oh, could you just try this little change over here? That would take us weeks, because we would then have to process the data for 8 hours to see if our change worked. And if it didn't, we would have to reprocess. And it just took so much time. And for the first time in my career, I can really see that things are changing. We've always had tools like AI. In the traditional sense, AI, you've got neural networks, you've got all the statistical models that were available to us, but were expensive, required specialist skills. And now we've got LLM being introduced into the mix, and large language models, plus all of those traditional ways of working, statistical models, really is a 1 + 1 = 30 type equation. And add on to that the compute power that is now available to us. That Barbican recommendations engine that took 8 hours would probably only take about 20 minutes now, and at a much reduced cost. But the way that we did that, we wouldn't, like if we were to redo the Barbican's recommendations engine, we now wouldn't do it in the same way, because we have so many more tools available to us than we've ever had previously. So finally, I think, we in the cultural sector have the tools that can help us keep pace. In March this year, I went over to, well, I'm in New York now actually, but I came to New York to talk to the Audiences 360 members to pitch an idea that we had, which was that all of our understanding of our patrons is very siloed in our own ticketing systems. And you know this through using Data Center already. But the silo of patrons in the database means that you only know what they have been to at your organization. And when you invite them to come back, you can only use the information in your database to figure out what they might be interested in. So we were pitching this idea that we could use what we collectively know about patrons in order to help us perform better. And if we could perform better, then potentially we could automate some of that, which would then alleviate some of the kind of mundane, if you like, tasks that we have to do on a day-to-day basis, so that we can spend our time doing more strategic and more impactful things. But right now we're kind of stuck having to process all the time. And the pitch that we made back in March was, would this even help? So we kind of shared that idea. I went back to them in May, and we found a volunteer called 54 Below. And they were a really interesting organization, because they have product on all year round. They have about 700 events on a year. And so we embarked in a journey with them to understand what their database looked like, what their retention rates were like, what their first-timer retention rates were, what their reactivation rates were. And we identified 4 segments that were really low risk to play with them. And they were our first-timers, so people who had literally attended a show last night. We wanted to reach out to them and send them an email that had very relevant content just for that individual. We also looked at stales. What we call stales are people who maybe haven't attended for between 18 to 36 months, about that, depends on the organization. And we wanted to capture people just before they went stale as our second use case. The third use case was those people who were stale. We know by analyzing their data that about 3% of that group of people come back. So we wanted to see if we could reactivate more of those stales. And finally, those people who are lapsed, the patrons who are lapsed, haven't been with us for about 3 years. And so we know from their database that about 1% of those patrons come back. And yet that forms the biggest group of patrons on their database, and in fact on most organizations' database. So we did all of this, and we found that we were actually building two things. The first thing was a recommendations engine, and the way that it worked was that we would be able to input an email address from 54 Below and enrich that patron's ticketing history from right across the audience's 360 members in order that we could find the very best shows at 54 Below to recommend to them. So basically, we were enriching patrons' data at 54 Below in order to provide better recommendations in the emails. And the way that this manifests itself is if you are a first timer. So they had, they're not a huge organization in terms of capacity. I think they've got about 150 seats. So they had about 20 bookers a day who were, or per performance, should I say, who were first timers. But because we were able to capture and enrich each of those 20 first timers' ticketing history, when we sent out an email to those first timers, each one of them may have got a different email. So that's the power of what we thought the recommendations would bring. And then we wanted to send an email out automatically. We didn't want the marketing staff to have to compile an email. In fact, it would be impossible, right, to compile an email for each of the patrons on the database and reorder it around. So we had to build a system that would enable them to just send out automated emails. So those two things together was the genesis of what we had come up with. And the way that we did that was, first of all, we had to scrape, if you like, all of the content from their website. And we went back as many years as we could. And for the years that they didn't have stuff on their website, we would have to receive digital brochures or something like that to populate the information about every show that's happened up to 7 years ago. Then we had to take their ticketing data so that we could match the event data with the content that was on their website. And using those two pieces of information, we were able to create this kind of almost like a document, a Word document about every single patron and a description of all the shows that they have been to. And that was not only at 54 Below, but then we had to go out and capture that from all of the other Audiences 360 members so that we could understand what marketing message our patron had sort of the marketing messages of the event that the patron had gone to, either at 54 Below or at any of the other Audiences 360 members. And then finally, because we didn't want to email anybody who had opted out, we had to integrate with their MailChimp system so that we can download all of their opt-outs. So by now, we've got this very big database of scraped web pages, of audience attendances right across the city. And we were able to use that. We called this thing, my team is not very good at creating names. So we called it Brains with a Z because they're really funny. And that's the system that kind of manages all of this activity. Did it work? I hear you asking. I hear you all shouting at the screen. The answer is yes, it did. Quite incredibly so. We built this thing. I met them in May. We built the thing between May and the middle of June. So it was a very, very, very quick development. Didn't have any bells and whistles in it at all. And then we went live in the middle of June, and then we were reporting back at the beginning of August. So we only had a kind of 6-week window to evaluate the results. So in that time, they had about 70-ish performances. And because they only have about 20 patrons, maybe a bit less than that, who are first time in each performance, we sent out 1,066 emails. And the response rate that we got to that was 1.8%. So 20 of the 1,000 people booked a ticket, and they bought 42 tickets, and that was $3,000. But we didn't actually send out an email to all of the patrons. We held back 20% of them. So if there was a performance last night with 20 first timers in it, we would hold back 4 of those patrons. We'd still calculate all of their recommendations for them, but we just wouldn't send them an email. Why? Because we wanted to see what they were going to do anyway. Were they just going to buy anyway, is what we wanted to find out. And so when we ran that analysis, we found that really of the 241 people we didn't send an email to, but who were first timers, one of them booked 2 tickets, $382. That was a 0.4% response rate. So we can then calculate that actually the true impact or the true response rate, if we take away what people would have done anyway, was 1.4%. So that meant that 15 bookers bought tickets and they bought 33 and $2,345 worth. Or put another way, if we hadn't sent that campaign out, 54 Below wouldn't have got 15 bookers buying 33 tickets at $2,345. So then we took that, because it was a 6-week period or something like that, and we just multiplied the impact across 12 months. And so for them, the impact was about $21,000. It's not huge, but actually these people are now more likely to come back because they have, they've attended again. We know that if you make 2 attendances, your chances of coming back are like 30% compared to 10% if you've only attended once. So this represents a really big win for them. We also did, I told you that we did the stale prevention, we did stales and laps. I'm just going to share with you the stale campaign. They had 35,000 stales. The response rate wasn't as strong. It doesn't surprise us at all. 0.6%, 196 patrons booking, 399 tickets and $29,000. The control was 0.2%. And so the true impact was 0.4%. And that generated $19,000 over about 2 campaigns. So the 12-month impact of that was now more like 116,000. Subsequently, we then talked to them about maybe they should consider putting an offer into their emails. And so we rebuilt their templates and we put an offer in. So there was it wasn't a strong offer, actually. It was a 10% discount. And then we made sure that another email went out closer after about a week to remind them that their offer was about to expire. So this was all automated. And so the true impact of just those 4 use cases was about $177,000. But what we know is that those people, now that they've come back, are more likely to come back within 12 months. So this is a bit of educated guesswork, but we know that they are 30% more likely to come back. So we've added a bit onto here to calculate what we actually think the true impact of this work will be for 54 Below. So it's about $220,000. That's about 5% of their total ticket revenue in 12 months. Subsequently, we've come over and we've just gone live with New York City Ballet. They are now running the first timer campaign. They're doing things slightly differently in terms of the offer. They're doing a buy one, get one free effectively, but not on every event because they didn't want the Nutcracker to get a buy one, get one free offer on it. So the design of their template was slightly different, but you can see roughly what this looks like. Every patron will fundamentally get a different email. Now, we are working also with the New York City Centre. We hope that they're going to be going live soon with these use cases. We also have Jazz at Lincoln Center. We've got the MCC, and we've got the New Group and a couple of others. So we've got a handful of people who are trialing this solution with us. But this is just one use case of it. Actually, we think that there are much greater use cases that could be impactful for cultural organizations. So one of the things that we we're going to be doing very quickly because its demand is high for it, is taking all of the first-time buyers from last season who haven't made a subsequent visit and sending them a hyper-personalized email that with the events at either 54 Below or New York City Ballet that they are most likely to be interested in next. I was at City Centre last night and they showed me that they had a multi-buy offer, 3 named events that they were trying to encourage people to buy for. The more you bought for, the bigger the discount. And so we discussed the art of the possible here, which is what if, well, first of all, I asked them, how are they currently finding prospects for that? And so they would find all the people that had been 2 or 3 times last season, and they were the target for the multi-buy offer. And I was like, well, what if we looked at your database and found all of the people on your database who scored highly in the recommendations engine for the events in your multi-buy offer? How would that impact response rates? It's not necessarily about frequency, but it's about relevance. And so we may be identifying people that have maybe only attended once a year for the last 3 years, but now all 3 events that they score really highly in from a recommendations engine point of view might be interested in buying that multi-buy offer. So that's one thing that we are considering. There's also the ability to think about marketing copy, right? So we could, if you have marketing copy that you want to test in real time, you can throw it into the system and it will then tell you how strongly it resonates with different members of your audience, whether they are first timers, lapsed, or your active patrons. So it's a really cool way of testing marketing copy. It can also then be used for potentially for programming support. What if before you even committed to commissioning a show or buying a show in, you could run a description of the show through the system to see what level of investment and where you would need to spend money in order to make that show sell. Maybe you might find that you don't have a very strong audience for that show because they're very low recommendation scores. And so this is going to be a high new to file audience. I don't know if this is of interest, but it could be. I know that Jazz at Lincoln Center has their Dizzy's program, and they've got a lot of content on, a bit like 54 Below. And so they're saying, well, can we curate a weekly email to all of our regular patrons telling them what's on that's relevant to them? And we're like, yes, let's do that. And then there's things like the next best actions. And this is a solution that we're thinking about building, which is for every person on the database, can we determine what the next best action is for that patron? Should they be a multi-buyer? Should they be a subscriber? Should they donate? Should they become a member? These are all the things that we believe the recommendations engine could do. And actually, every conversation that we have with people, we're figuring out new and different ways to apply this this technology. And so finally, I think we've landed on a solution that's driven by community data and driven by the technology, the reduction in technology costs and the advances in AI to allow us to look through the front windscreen of the car and see which way we are going. So this is where the invitation comes in. We are not in that early majority stage yet on this screen now. We are definitely working with the innovators and the early adopters, those people who kind of don't mind trying things out, have a little bit of patience. Not everything will work, although we will definitely manage risk so that there's no risk or damage to anybody. But some of these things just might not work, and we don't know until we've tried it. So we're working with these guys here who are our innovators. We're queuing up Jazz, the MCC, Second Stage, Perlman, and the New York Theatre Workshop to come along, and they're being onboarded right now. And so we are looking for 1 or 2 or 3 more organizations who might be interested in joining us. We will make as much of the work as light lift as possible. But you will be a partner with us in figuring this out. This won't be a kind of sit back and expect the system to just perform. So, and there will be some cost related to it, but not a big cost. And I'm not saying all of this to put you off, but just to set expectations that that we are going to be on a journey together to build something extraordinary. So if this is something of interest, please do reach out and we can just have a chat through what the art of the possible is.
Great, thanks, Stuart. I have a couple questions, and I want to make sure we have
Great.
time to open it up for others. If you do have a question, just go ahead and raise your hand. I'll call on you, and we can manage it that way. But initially, so first of all, obviously, this is really exciting. I know I've spoken with you about this for a while. It's exciting for me to see some of this come to fruition. And obviously, we're very interested in seeing what this could do here in our market. What type, like what's the cost structure based on? Like, how do you base your cost for something like this?
Well, at the moment, what we're doing is because of the use cases that we've got, you remember I talked about the true uplift of the campaigns? We would take a commission off that. So it's if it doesn't work for you, you don't pay anything. And if it works really well for you, we're taking, and the commission structure is 5% right now. We know that that structure may not be applicable to all use cases, but we're trying to keep the costs affordable whilst also being able to feed the innovation.
Sure. And obviously, this isn't something, even if a group wanted to partner with you on, they'd be able to do on their own. It's obviously have to be done in tandem with your team. So what does that process tend to look like? Or is there a single point of contact? And if so, who would that be? And
Yeah.
just kind of what does that look like in a real use case?
So you're using data center right now, and so under contract, it's really the same use case contract that you've got there. You're just allowing us to send emails out on your behalf, like a Mailchimp. And so there are two things that we need to think about. One is about getting your ticketing data synced with us on a daily basis. And so we have a tool for that. If you are using a compatible system, we have a tool for that. And that ingests all of your data. We then just go off and scrape all of your web data, so you don't need to do anything there. And we present you with an application which allows you to then go and sign off, if you like, all of the copy that is against each event. We work with you to design the email template. That typically takes about a week or two. And once that's done, there's still no commitment to use this thing. We put you in a thing called test mode, which means that you can run the system live, but it doesn't go out to patrons, only you get the emails. And then when you're happy, we turn off test mode, and then your patrons will get those emails, but you get to control which performances trigger the first time emails. I'm the person of contact. So right now, if you reach out to me, I can step you through all of that. But we do utilize the production team back at base to support us with all of this.
Got it. And then my last question for you is, well, sorry, not my last question, but my last question of the moment for you is clearly we're working with a lot of different ticketing systems and a lot of different email systems.
Mm-hmm.
So does that create barriers for you? Are there only specific email systems you're working with, or regardless of the email system, this would be available to somebody, or ticketing system?
Because of the place we're in the innovating in stage, I don't think that the email system places particular barriers, and I'll tell you for why. Because two of our clients use Wordfly. Wordfly doesn't have an API in it, so we are literally we've got someone manually downloading all the opt-outs on a daily basis, so that we're not mailing out anybody that we shouldn't be, and we're posting back any opt-outs that come through these emails back into their Wordfly system. If you're in Mailchimp or Prospect2, where there are APIs, then that happens automatically. If you're using a different system and they've got an API, we will build that, because it doesn't take that long, but it helps prevent staff having to download, our staff having to download and upload that stuff. Ticketing system wise, there is a list of the standard systems that we integrate with. We probably won't be able to build new integrations specifically for people that aren't on a compatible system, but we are building 6 more DDXs that we know are kind of used in the market. So we expect to see that expand. But if you're on Patron Manager, Tessitura, Spectrix, Theatre Manager, Jenny, help me out.
I'm gonna get the full list and copy it into the chat.
Yeah,
Awesome. Thank you.
Thanks, Jenny.
I'll just ask a Salesforce one of them.
Say again.
Salesforce, the Salesforce one.
Salesforce, I mean, Patron Manager is built on Salesforce. So if it's a Salesforce system that isn't Patron Manager, it will be possible.
Okay.
We would have to build that though.
Got it. So are there questions from others in the room about this this opportunity, either more clarification about what it does, or if you were interested, how you'd follow up? Howard.
Sorry, I can't figure out how to raise hands here. For some
That's
reason,
okay.
it's not showing up. Hi, Stuart. I'm Howard Levine from State Theater, New Jersey.
Good to
So
meet you.
a few questions. So we are on Tessitura. We use Prospect 2 for our mail delivery. A question is, if you're organizing, sending the emails out, I mean, we're proofing them and approving them. What happens if someone clicks to unsubscribe from an email? Is that get back into the email system, Tessitura? How would that work?
Yeah, we typically we will work with you to figure that out if that's if there's a way that you want to work that's different from how we would default it. So the way that we would default it is that they would unsubscribe through the email. We would capture that and post that back into your Prospect 2 system, so that your email system has to be the database of truth, especially during these trials, because we are just testing things out. So yeah, that's the way we would do it.
Okay, and the next question is, so we're already sending, after every show, we're sending a post-show email, driving them to performances that are currently in our season, giving them a discount,
Yep.
Depending on who they are and what the show coming up would be.
Yep.
If we were in a testing phase with you, and we're already doing that with every audience,
Yep.
would we somehow have to coordinate, because we don't want someone to get two emails?
Yeah.
So
we would have to coordinate. So either you would say, we would work together to say, well, why don't we automate that for everybody? Or we would say, why don't you not do the first timers and we'll do the first timers? Like, we can figure that out together. I think making sure is possibly one of the challenges, is making sure that we're not disrupting kind of a finely tuned marketing strategy and tactics that are in place, but still allowing the testing of all of that to go ahead to see if it's something that would be scalable beyond there.
great, thank you.
Other questions for Stuart while he's here with us?
Oh, that's a good question. Hey
Hey,
there.
Debbie.
Hi. Apologies if I missed this, but is there a recommended database size minimum?
No, really not. The challenge, I think, is the use cases. If you have maybe 3 or 4 shows a year, I think the use case is going to be slightly different to if you have a lot of product on, right? Because the recommendations engine is therefore going to be more about identifying the people that should come to those shows, rather than just shuffling recommendations, the 4 recommendations of shows that you've got around in different orders. So there is a different approach that we would take to, depending on the amount of inventory that you've got. But it really doesn't matter about the size of patron database. In fact, if you don't have a big database, there's more value sometimes to be gained from it, because we're going to be enriching those patrons that you have with what they've done right across the either New York or in New Jersey. That's the intention about it. So there's more intelligence behind those patrons.
And so are you saying that you could potentially match a patron record across organizations, which is something that AIM already has the capability of doing, to give them recommendations that might be beyond our institution, for example?
Well, that's a very, very good question. That was where we started, actually, back in May, and back in March, and what we found out was that there is appetite for that, but we need to figure out, lots of people wanted to sort out the kind of automation and the kind of relevance within their organization first. Like there was a lot of pressure on to do that. So that's where we started. As this evolves, I can imagine that would be one of the use cases that whoever works with us would discuss and go, shall we try that? Like, and just see if it works.
Interesting. All right, thank you.
Kelly.
Can you say more about, you were saying that it would be gathering up sort of the marketing messaging that they responded to? Can you say more about that, like about how that works? And also is then it serving specific messaging to them based on that? Or is that how it's drawing the like what to serve them as a recommendation?
It's a very good question. Hi, Kelly. What we do is the historical data, we have to capture the marketing message of the event that they attended to. And we basically build this Word document. It's not a Word document, but imagine it's like a Word document that describes all of the events that they went to. We then use AI to turn that into what we call, it's called a synthetic template. In that synthetic template is a thing that has driven up the accuracy of these recommendations using our testing to about 80%. So we get a hit rate of about 80%, knowing that we can accurately predict what somebody's going to go to 80% of the time. That is based on this thing called an emotional hook, which is what is the patron going to get out of that experience, or what have they been getting out of that experience? Then we compare that synthetic template to the synthetic templates of your future inventory. So we can do this kind of comparison based on a similar structure. And that's how the recommendations are created.
Wow.
The emails are built verbatim from your website and the images that are on your website. So there's no need to sign off additional copy or anything like that.
So it's the same copy where it's already established for that event, but it's using, that makes sense. Thank you for talking a bit more about that.
And Howard.
A follow-up question is, so the predictive engine, it's looking at the database and activity within the database. None of our databases are extremely clean. I'm sure you're dealing with duplicate records. Sure. Does that throw the AI? Is it throwing things off if there's multiple accounts, different addresses?
Yeah, I mean, some of this is inevitable. We do it based on email address because that's the recipient. So that's quite an easy thing to dedupe in there. So that's the kind of that's what we use to build the recommendations on based on the email address. So that's how we build the history. That's how we build the recommendations. I mean, data quality, rubbish in, rubbish out in every way. Like that hasn't changed with the advent of AI, although we can use AI to clean things up a lot more quickly now. So, we can deal with dirty data a bit better now than we used to be able to do.
And I think you said this, everything that you would be, especially at the testing phase, everything that it's putting together would be subject to approval or change.
Yeah. You have total control. The only thing this is the interesting element of it, I think, which is that we are giving some agency to the AI to decide which events to promote in that email to that patron. That's the agency we're giving over to the AI. But everything else, the copy of the template and the copy in the shows and who that gets sent to is all managed by you. And you don't have to do anything. You can turn on one performance and just check what that's like. So you get all of that. We're managing.
Kelly, did you have another question, or are you just applauding?
No, that was supposed to be raising my hand. Now I've forgotten my question. No, it's a little bit about and Howard, you asked a little bit of this too. We would be then wanting to keep, like, if we're using the testing system for first-time buyers, we kind of want to isolate them, right? And not have them run in other campaigns. So they'd only be getting sort of information through this test.
That's something to
scenario.
Yeah, that's something to discuss, actually. The detail of that is to discuss. It kind of doesn't matter because we've got this control cell in. they may be hearing other messages, whether that's, you know, radio adverts, TV, whatever. They'll be hearing that anyway. The control cell is designed to kind of just make sure that they are, you know, what the impact of that campaign was. The only reason why we would want to suppress those first timers is if there's a risk that they'll be getting multiple emails with multiple messages in a short space of time.
So, and have you looked at that control group to see how, in the control group, when they did make a purchase, how much was that in line with what the AI system predicted would be an event that would interest them?
It's a really good question, and at the moment we're literally evaluating conversion rates with the, you know, we've got a handful of clients, but we're capturing all of that data, and so we're hearing from the people that are using it right now saying it would be really good to get some insights on that. We just need to build up the volume of data that we've got to make it statistically significant. But
That'd be so interesting to see, like, how good is it at prediction?
Yeah, totally.
Great. Well, this is all very exciting, Stuart, and as you know, we are definitely interested in continuing to have the conversation with you about how to use this tool kind of market wide, but also very wanting to tune folks into how they can jump in and use it, you know, on a case by case basis for individual organization. So
yeah, exactly. And the future really is going to be in the hands of the people that are able to come along and innovate with us, and it's an exciting partnership.
Sure, absolutely. So I also wanted to open the conversation up with Jenny, because Jenny is also here with us. And Jenny is your typical point of person contact. So we want to use these summits to give folks the opportunity to ask questions directly to Jenny about any issues you're running into, or I think Jenny, you were saying what works and what isn't working kind of theme to
Yeah.
popcorn around the room a little.
Yeah, I like to just open it up to folks, the what's working, what's not. I'm a big fan of that structure. You know, depending on, I don't know, it could be anything. You have certain marketing campaigns that are working, certain things that you had a really successful direct mail, you had a real dud of something, like, so if there's anything that you know, you just want to throw out there to the group, it's not necessarily data center related, but I'm, you know, happy to take those types of questions as well. And so as you're thinking, if you have something you want to say, I'll just add to Stuart's presentation that the long-term plan is that this will get integrated into data center. So right now it's its own separate thing in its incubator over here as we're exploring and evaluating and building and all of the fun things that our very smart tech team are doing. But eventually the hope is that it will come into data center and be an additional feature in what you're already using. Anything?
I mean, this isn't really a specific data center question, but I'll tell you that we are at ArtPride, we're evaluating the amount of information and the types of questions we're asking folks, because they create an online account with our website. So basically the way the website works is you can peruse the website if you want, but if you create a profile, you get more customized content when you log in. And the main carrot really is the discount. So you can see discounts that are available on the website, but you can't get the redemption method without having an account. Right? That's you can see the 20% off show at XYZ Theater, but without being logged in, you can't see the code to redeem it. So that's kind of the biggest carrot. We are certainly signing folks up, but we're not signing folks up at the rate that we would be hoping for. And we're debating whether it's because of the amount of questions we ask, because we do ask first name, last name, email, but we also ask for mailing address. We ask for preferences, like what kind of arts experiences you're most interested in. So that form is a similar form we've been using for forever, frankly, for 20 years. But we're wondering if it's becoming a deterrent. We're starting to look at, you know, the web stats to justify like how many people are landing on that page versus conversion and all that. We're trying to weigh that. And I just don't know if you have any input on that or if other folks have input to share. It's the cost benefit analysis of if we were to pivot and just ask for first name, last name, email, we lose so much so much marketing intelligence on that person that the quality of that contact decreases, even though theoretically the number would go up. And we're trying to balance that. Yeah, so I don't know. That's again not necessarily specific to data center, but it's definitely something on top of mind for us as we're thinking.
Yeah, 100%. I talk to museums about this all the time because historically, we call them orphan records, right? So patron accounts that have just a name and an email address and no direct mail. And at museums, it's often because people are just show up and tap and go, right? They're not required to sit and type in all their information to buy a single admission for the day. So, but historically, in all of our data and all of our studies, it is a quality over quantity thing, whereas the quality of the data and the likelihood that you will get those people back again and engaging in a better way, you need all of their information to do that. So I would err on the side of collecting more data.
Mhm.
I will say, because of the psychology of just like the duality of choice that human beings, maybe it's a side by side. So it's like if you want like just to access, here's just name and email. If you want access with discounts and personalized recommendations and A, B, and C, fill out this with a little bit more information.
Yeah,
Because that way, and I would do it probably like this. So give us more information for all of the better things. P.S. If you don't want to do that, you can just give us your email. So that it's not to register or not. It's give
right.
us more information or slightly less information so that whichever choice, in parenting, they joke about this all the time, right? Like you give your child the appearance of control over their environment by giving them two choices that you're fine with either,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
It's not like, do you want vegetables with dinner? It's, do you want carrots or peas? I don't care what you pick. Either way, you're getting a vegetable, right? And with humans en masse, it's very similar to parenting a young child, I have found. You just want to again, give choices. But so that would be my recommendation.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Do other folks have questions for Jenny while she's with us? This is a great kind of
I,
mini one consult.
I popped a question into the chat.
Oh yeah, Tanisha, what about a conversion campaign to convert them from low value to high value?
Yeah, you could absolutely do that. I would say, um, you know, um, some information is better than none. More information is better than some, right? So if for all those people that are just giving you a name and an email address, that absolutely you should be trying to convert them, fill out this quick survey for a discount, right? And the survey is just their mailing address and their preferences on programming or whatever else you want to ask.
Right.
Yeah, 100%. Always ask for the next step and the more engagement for sure.
Howard?
Hi, Jenny. I don't know if you have a solution to this, but we were looking at possibly using the demographic filters more and more, and trying to really start to sort of send very specific targeted emails based on, economic levels or other things that are in the database. Unfortunately, what we found though is that the sample rates are so low for certain aspects of those demographics that it was like we were getting a result of send an email to two people, which would be kind of useless.
That would be useless, yeah.
Is there something we may be doing wrong, or is it just it's based on census data, and if it matches our system, great. If it doesn't,
Yeah, so there are a couple of things at play there. One is that state data privacy laws are constantly evolving and changing. And so far, the only demographic attribute that it's really affecting is the race and ethnicity piece of the puzzle. So you'll see, I'm just assuming that New Jersey is that way as well. So you'll see like 0.3% match rates on that particular attribute because most states are an opt-in scenario. And who's gonna like take the time to figure out how to opt in to share their data? Like no one's gonna do that. California, we're an opt-out state. So there, again, like if you're requiring someone to take an action, nobody is opting out. So we have a lot more data. If you're an organization of $50 million, less than $50 million, is the very specific California law. But so I would say that's one piece of the puzzle. So if you're looking at race and ethnicity, that's why. The other piece is about the data completeness. So the return rates really are really going to only return demographic information of folks that have current mailing addresses. So if there's a lot of like very old addresses in your system, it's like 3 NCOAs ago or something, it's gonna have the data is gonna have a hard time matching that. Same thing with like the way that you're doing your householding sometimes in tests. Like if my husband and I have one account and you've imported data center to where like we're both there. So like instead of having I have one account and my husband has one account, if we have one joint account, the data might be returned a little funky because it's not sure which person it's pulling data on. So those are just a couple of things I would check. But overall, I love the specificity in giving people, in talking to people that's more specific, like generationally. Um, I just did a presentation to a bunch of high school kids last week about what marketing is, and I asked AI to explain K-pop Demon Hunters. If anyone has seen it, it's my whole life right now with a 7-year-old. Explain it to each of the generations and how differently AI wrote and presented that to the baby boomers, the Gen Xers, the millennials, and the Gen Zs. And the Gen Z, it's like speaking in code. Words that I don't like. Do we say mid? Like, I don't know. And all the kids in the room are like, yeah, that's how I'd say it. And it was, anyway, I'm going down a rabbit hole, but it's very fun. It's a good way to engage people. I was talking to a symphony last week. They're doing a Radiohead concert this coming summer, and they're doing a Gen X, very specific Gen X marketing acquisition effort that where the copy is very Gen X. And so I'm very curious to see how that performs. But anyway, yeah, big fan of
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Awesome. I think we have time for one last question. Shoanne, you have a question about privacy?
Yeah, and this might be an extension of what you were answering and talking about before. So what do you do with members, let's say people that we upload, right, are and they're comfortable with being in a database, but not comfortable with their information being utilized with AI. Is there a protocol for that? Because I can think of maybe a few people that might ask that or become uncomfortable if they're aware of that.
So I think the thing really here is all about your privacy policies and about how explicit you are in how patron data is going to be used. There isn't actually any yet legislation that prevents the data from being processed in this way, because it's kind of being done by us and behind the scenes. So we're not sort of sharing data around with everybody to decorate that data out. But I can imagine that privacy policies will need to be a bit more transparent, and then opt-out rules about how their data is used with AI and stuff like that. I mean, to be fair, we're not processing their data with AI. We're processing the event data with AI, which is a bit more, we're not actually putting their data into AI. That's probably a key thing.
I think, yeah, I think I will definitely update our privacy policy in that specific line of you're processing event data, not specifically their data. I think would make someone who's hesitant more comfortable, but something good to make clear.
Yeah, transactional data, I think, could be put in there, but not necessarily their personal data. That's the key thing.
Great question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, well.
So thank you very much, Jenny and Stuart, for being with us. I'm going to let you go on your way. I do have a couple of housekeeping things to share with the rest of the group, but I know you're both on very tight schedules. So thank you so much for being with us and staying actually a few minutes longer than you originally planned, but this was great information. Thank you.
Thanks, Jim. Thanks, everyone. Nice to see you. Bye.
So that was a great conversation. Thank you all so much for the really awesome questions. That was made me think about things certainly in a different way as well. There is some housekeeping to go through in our last few minutes together. So AIM subscriptions, if you have an AIM subscription, which I think everybody here does, it will automatically renew on February 1st, 2026. You don't have to do anything. The opt-out deadline, if you have an AIM subscription and you wanted to cancel it, the opt-out deadline for that is January 2nd, 2026. So on January 3rd, 2026, you're in because we have to deal with the licensing with TRG. So there's a juggling act that goes on over that 30 some days about the purchasing of licensing, and the costs fluctuate depending on how many we're buying. And that's all what we're dealing with behind the scenes. But that's why those deadlines are set that way. Once January like 3rd hits, we're buying your license is purchased. So we can't kind of back out of it at that point. If you do not have, if you're on the call today and you're AIM curious and you don't have an AIM subscription yet, that's great. I'm glad you're here. In early November, like about a month from now, we'll be opening up the window for 2026 AIM subscriptions. And they'll run from early November into mid-January is that window to purchase a subscription for 2026. And again, they run February 1 through January 31 the following year. That's the cycle year that AIM is on. Just wanted to be open about that. I am going to share, we may be looking at for the first time in a long time, a slight price increase. For those who remember pre-pandemic, when the pandemic hit, we slashed all the AIM subscriptions 50%, and we've left them there for the past 5 years. So we're not restoring them back to pre-pandemic levels. That's not good. We're not going to hit you with some kind of huge price jump, but the cost of this program does go up every year, and we're in a very tight year ourselves. So you'll be looking at a slight price increase. Obviously, that's going to be made transparent to you in your emails that you're going to be getting. So you're fully aware of that well ahead of opt-out deadlines. But it's not going to be anything crazy. But I don't see that we can continue to freeze this 50% off forever. So just be aware. And again, all that'll be up on the website and in your emails that you'll get about renewals. We'd also have coming up our final Jersey Arts Marketers meeting of the year. That's going to be on November the 14th at Grounds for Sculpture. It is a 4-hour afternoon session. We're calling it an idea lab. So this is unlike what we did in May, which was 4 hours of very intense kind of graduate level learning on how to do digital marketing with Grapeseed. This is not going to be quite that intense. It's definitely going to be a lot of networking with each other and a lot of idea sharing. I don't want to call it an open space because it's not truly an open space, but in a format that's going to allow us to brainstorm together what the biggest challenges that you all are facing when it comes to audience recruitment and retention, and then breaking out into smaller groups around the room to unpack those ideas. So we're not coming with a fully developed agenda because you're going to help shape the agenda that day. And then we're going to reconvene and kind of share that out. And that's going to do a couple of things, right? It's going to let us learn. I mean, in ArtPride, we know the big picture stuff because we can see the big picture numbers, but we're not in the trenches as you all are, like selling tickets every day to shows. So we're not fully aware of what the challenges you all are facing. And we've definitely got great feedback from the recent member survey. But the member survey was one data point and oftentimes wasn't filled out by the marketing people. So this is another chance to hear directly from you in this kind of group setting, what challenges you're facing, and then some idea sharing about how other folks in the industry are working on that. So some peer-to-peer stuff's going to go on, and it's going to help shape kind of what we want to address in 2026. Like if we're going to be shaping professional development in 2026, knowing more firsthand what the biggest challenges you are facing will help us kind of shape that in a way that's the most relevant for you. So it's free. There's no fee, regardless of your ArtPride member status. There's no fee. Deontay Griffin Quick from DGQ Culture will be moderating the panel. He recently did the ArtPride retreat. It's going to be, for those that were at the ArtPride retreat, it's going to be similar format to that is what this meeting will be like. I mean, not identical because that was longer, but that same kind of idea that they'll be kind of bouncing around the room, moving around the room into different stations, that kind of thing. So I think it's going to be really fun. I think it's going to be really informative. Obviously, the more people we have, the more impactful those conversations are going to be. So I strongly encourage you to go to artpridej.org/events, which is where you can register and sign up. We definitely need to know that you're coming, because we're going to have to plan accordingly based on the number of people. So it's free, but you do need to register. So please, if you haven't already, please take a moment to do that. And we hope to see a lot of you there. So we are at 3:03. That is 3 minutes past our end time. So I'm going to let everyone go. Thank you so much for spending the last hour with us. I hope you found this really helpful and informative. I hope you have a great day.